So the talk this evening is being recorded and it will be available on the UHDB website in about 2 weeks' time. It's in the governors section of the UHDB website, and we have got all our previous talks on there as well. So to commence this evening, we are going to have a talk by Jill Matthews, who's our Chief Officer for Derby and Burton Hospitals Charity, about the activities of the charity across the Trust.
Thanks, Val, and welcome everybody. It's lovely to see so many people here tonight. As Val says, I'm Jill. I head up Derby and Burton Hospitals Charity. Our purpose is entirely to support our patients, our staff, and improvements to healthcare here and now and in the future. And I thought I'd spend just a couple of minutes talking about what we do for our end-of-life services here at UHDB. End of life is understandably one of the funds that gets the most support from people in our communities and from our patients' families when they want to say thank you for the care their loved ones received within the hospital and within the community setting. So we are very fortunate to be able to spend quite a lot of money on end-of-life services here in UHDB. And for example, we provide as a charity all of the hospice-style benefits our patients receive in the Nightingale here at RDH and on Ward 2 at Florence Nightingale in the city centre. That's things like complimentary therapists, massages, memory boxes, special food and drink, opportunities to celebrate special occasions if they occur during the time somebody's with us on the ward. The charity is very pleased to fund those sorts of things for people. We also fund a lot of staff training. So over and above the training that people would expect to have for their job, we fund some additional training like advanced communication skills, psychological support for our staff who work in end-of-life services, because it is a challenging part of the environment to work in, so the charity supports a lot of that. We also, not just for our end-of-life patients and for our staff, but for anybody within the community and our hospitals, we provide a free will service available to all. It's a way of, and I'm sure Jane will talk about, it's an important feature of planning your finances for the future and for the benefit of your families. So if anyone's interested in a will to be written free, please pop onto our website, dbhc.org.uk, and follow the links for it. I've done it myself. I gave myself a good talking to about how important it was to write one. It's done me no harm. And I might have thought for many years it would. And it's a very easy and straightforward process to do, and I would urge people to think about it if they haven't already. And as I said at the beginning, we benefit from a lot of financial donations to our end-of-life services, but we also benefit for some really great gifts in kind. I hope you all got a bunch of daffodils today. They were from Marks and Spencer's. Marks and Spencer's donate their flowers 3 times a week to us to put on our end-of-life wards. They're the only wards in the hospital that are allowed flowers. And then for the charity to give out to people we'd like to thank. So I was very, very chuffed today when they had an enormous bucket of daffodils for me that I could give to everybody here, because they are a real symbol of the importance of end-of-life care and of end-of-life planning. So for those of you who benefit from our service, I hope it brings you comfort. And for those of you who support us, and I know many of you do, a huge thank you. It's much appreciated. Enjoy this evening.
So thank you, Jill. I'd like to introduce now Jane Morland, who's our lead facilitator for end-of-life planning. There will be time at the end of the talk for questions and answers. And if you're joining us on Teams, if you put your question in the chat box, and we'll get round to that question as well. So Jane, thank you.
Over to me.
Yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much for that. So welcome everybody. I've managed to speak to some of you tonight before I do this talk. When I was asked to do this, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, because end-of-life care is such a huge topic. I said to Val, what bit is it you want me to do? So I'm hoping I've fulfilled the brief with what I'm about to do. But please, at the end, like Val said, if you've got any questions, I am more than happy to help and answer those for you. So without any further ado, I'm just hoping the technology works now. I'm assuming because you're here, you're not the ostrich with your head in the sand. And like me, I don't know whether you like me or not, but I talk a lot about death and dying. And have done really since I was young, since about 13, when I was sort of obsessed with sort of older people and people getting old and then dying. Anyway, it's always been a bit of a theme for me, but I'm guessing that you're not the ostrich. However, a lot of people don't like talking about it. They feel it's unsettling or depressing, a little bit of the fear of the unknown, really. And it's about how we demystify dying, because the one thing we all have in common is that we are all going to die. So have you thought about what's important to you? Have you thought about the people who are important to you? Have you thought about where you would like to be cared for? Have you thought about what you want to do with your finances or anything like that? Have you thought about music at your funeral? That's if you want a funeral. There's lots of things that we perhaps need to think about. Some of you may have a bucket list. Where have you got to on that bucket list? I think we're all a little bit guilty of putting things off, or maybe I know I am. Well, I'll do that when I retire. Why am I waiting until then, when there's things I want to see and things I want to do and things I want to put in place? Dying Matters Awareness Week is in May, which is why I'm mentioning it here, because dying matters, so let's talk about it. And this gives us an opportunity to actually normalise talking about death and dying. So I'm really going to talk about getting your house in order. So this really is the beginning. This really is the bit that shouldn't be too uncomfortable. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But there are simple things that we can do where you can start that process. The first one, I suppose, is making a will, which, like Jill said, I am going to talk a little bit more about it, but that's probably what most people think about. As a matter of interest, who in the audience has got a will? Hands up. Wow. So the majority of you. Anybody under the age of 50 in the audience that's got a will? So 50 seems to be the age where people start to think about it. I don't know at what age you were, but it seems to be at the time, certainly with generations gone by, where that financial stability may be coming into play, where retirement starts coming to the fore, etc., etc. It'd be interesting to see over the next few generations where that shift goes in making a will. Sometimes we're spurred on to make a will because we've experienced loss already. Somebody close to us has already died. There's many reasons why we suddenly start thinking about making a will. But more often than not, it's the over 50s where we start thinking about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about power of attorney, bank accounts, finances, and digital legacy, which may or may not be a new term to you, but it's one that you absolutely should be aware of. Planning a funeral, discussing treatment preferences, and potentially thinking about where you might want to die. So, making a will, probably the safest place to start, because this is probably the bit that doesn't feel as uncomfortable, because it's discussed a lot, isn't it, in society, making wills. We see adverts on television for making wills. You do need to have mental capacity, but you don't always have to use a solicitor. And as Jill said, in the Trust, we do offer a free wills service. There are plenty of people out there that offer free will services. You just need to be mindful, though, that sometimes they may not be under the same governance as perhaps a solicitor would be, but they are cheaper to use that. You can even do it yourself online using a template, but I would only advise that if your estate is easy, if what you want to leave is easy and straightforward. If you've got something a little bit more complicated, I would definitely advise a wills writing service or a solicitor. You need to be thinking about what you're leaving. So your estate, your housing, any beneficiaries that you might want to include. Do need to think about your executors, and it's always recommended that you have at least 2. One of those executors, if you use a solicitor, could be a solicitor. And the other recommendation that a lot of people don't always know is that you really should review your will quite frequently. So definitely when your circumstances change or something changes, or every 3 to 5 years. And a lot of people either aren't told that or don't know that. So just something to bear in mind for the vast majority of you who have already got a will. When was the last time you looked at it? Is it still relevant, and is it still what you want? So finances and digital legacy. The good old digital footprint that we are leaving more and more trails of now. When we think about internet banking, for one, how many of you are resistant maybe to internet banking but are having to concede because your banks are closing and you're having no option? So some of the time we're forced online. Sometimes it's because you want to be online. You may be on social media. You need to think about those kind of accounts. You may have lots of videos and things and photos stored on iCloud. That might be a new phenomenon to you, but it's there, isn't it? There may be other things like online shopping or accounts that you've got or subscriptions that you've got. Lots of things we do online food shopping. All of these accounts, you're leaving your digital footprint. Some of them, or all of them, will have passwords. So what happens if you're incapacitated or you're dying? Who can access your phone? How are you accessing your phone? Is it a PIN number? Is it a thumbprint? Is it facial recognition? What happens to all that information and that data you've got digitally? Whether that be on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad. All of these devices that we've got are all digital footprints. I'll give you a little simple tip. For iPhones, anybody who's got an iPhone, as I've done it myself, in the settings, in security, you can nominate a person to be in charge of your phone if you're incapacitated. It takes literally seconds to set up. And that person then receives a QR code. So in the event you're incapacitated, they can then access your phone if they don't know your PIN number. So it is worth looking at your devices and seeing how you can access on your devices, or how you can set up on your devices for somebody else to access them in the event that you can't. Same with passwords. Having them written down somewhere safe that somebody knows where to go to should they need to. Because I don't know whether any of you have been in that situation, but it is a bit of a minefield when you're left and you don't know how to access somebody, their devices, their accounts, because you don't have the passwords to be able to do that. So the thing to do with creating a digital legacy, we don't want to find your passwords in the odds and sods drawer. It needs to be somewhere that's accessible, that your nominated person knows where they are. So make a list to begin with. and you actually might have a longer list than you anticipated. Decide how you want your accounts handled. Now, it might be for some of your accounts, you just say suspend them, cancel them. It might be that some of them, depending on what they are, like social media accounts, you may want them continuing after you've died, for that account to remain open. It tends to happen with younger people. Younger people tend to want to have their Facebook account, for example, or their Instagram account to carry on. Maybe different, you might want it to completely cease. As it says on here, and I've already said, research your policies for your various accounts, your security policies, and to see what it is you can do to assure that somebody has access to those in the event that you are unable, incapacitated, or you have died. Decide on your digital executor, and that probably will be, or maybe, the similar person to who your executor is of your will, maybe your nearest and dearest. And the way you can legitimise that is to add it to your will, and that's becoming increasingly common. So when I talk about reviewing your will every 3 to 5 years, it might be you need to now add your digital legacy to your will. I'm going to play a little video. I don't believe there are subtitles to this. Oh, not. Oh, it's come up. Thank you.
Donation is when one person chooses to give an organ to save or improve the life of someone else. Organ donation is your decision. You can choose which organs to donate or opt out of donation altogether. If you are Black, Asian or minority ethnic, choosing to donate could increase the chances of someone from the same background finding a life-saving match. Every organ donor has the potential to save up to 9 lives. Whatever you decide, please talk to your loved ones. Get the facts from the organ donation website to help you. Organ donation.
That's a little bit about organ donation. I'm sure you were aware that we now operate an opt-out system in England. That said, your family still needs to consent to your organs to be donated. And more often than not, we know that it's actually families that may sometimes not agree to that, even though you have signed to say that you're quite happy, you haven't opted out. So it is important to discuss this with your nearest and dearest, so that they know that you really do want to donate. And if you don't want to donate, please opt out. Interestingly, actually, not all of us are even eligible. Approximately, as it said here, 1 in 100 people can actually be donors, and that's because of where we die. So the majority of donors typically end up being in intensive care or in the emergency department, rather than through your progressive diseases, your malignant diseases, or frailty, so your long-term conditions. All major religions and belief systems in the UK are open to the principle of organ donation, which is why in England we have gone to the opt-out system. Just something to bear in mind. You can also be a living donor and donate a kidney. The other thing that we are, I'm going to talk about, because we are a site for this, is cornea donation. We have recently joined partnership with a company called iOrbit that's happening in England, and RDH, Royal Derby Hospital, is one of the sites in the country, one of 10 sites in the country that are harvesting corneas at the end of life. So again, something to think about. It is the gift of sight. It doesn't matter if you have a malignant disease or poor eyesight. It won't stop you donating your corneas. It doesn't delay a donor's funeral, and it doesn't affect how a donor would look. It's done quite easily, 24 hours after you die. And if you haven't discussed this or written it down anywhere that you wish to do this, our bereavement service is the team who will be contacting your loved ones to be asking about this. So this is something that's going to be more common because it's something that can improve people's lives quite significantly. Quite a simple thing such as donating your corneas can significantly improve somebody's life. If you change your mind about the decision to donate your corneas, you just go onto the organ donor register and withdraw your consent. Planning your funeral. It's like planning a wedding, I think, anyway, because you have to consider your budget and where you'd like it to be. What kind of ceremony would you like? Flowers, who do you want there? What music would you like playing? Who do you want to be giving a speech? Who don't you want to be giving a speech? And then the food, because you need, for a party, you need food, don't you? So think of a funeral like you would a wedding. You might not be as excited about it, but it's certainly something that should be thought about. So, what does an average funeral cost? Well, it depends on how big and flamboyant you want it, just like a wedding. So it can cost up to £10,000. However, if you're a little bit more modest and you don't mind a registry office, so to speak, then it's about £5,000, from the direct cremation being the cheapest at about £1,000. Other options to consider are funeral payment plans, and they are very popular and quite common. They are a fixed price, and then it just reduces that emotional burden and financial pressure on your loved ones. It's a gift to them, even though they may not want to think about it, or you may not want to think about it. It is a gift to them. Something that is becoming ever more popular is simple cremation, which is a direct or unattended cremation. And that is a direct cremation, no funeral service. You are collected from the mortuary, you are cremated, and you are given back to your loved ones in an urn. And it's about £1,000. It's becoming increasingly popular in England for that option. What happens though, you're just looking at the numbers there and thinking, wow, what happens though if I can't pay for a funeral? I don't have enough money. So if you are on benefits, you are potentially likely to be able to have government funeral payment scheme. And that's something that you can look at now if you're claiming benefits. If not, and you have no money, then you will be funded through the public health funeral funds. Sadly, we are seeing an increase in the number of public health funerals. Your council tax is paying for more public health funerals. And if somebody dies in the hospital who doesn't have enough money to pay for their funeral, or their nominated person doesn't think that they can afford that, then the hospital pays for that funeral. And we again are seeing increasing numbers of people that we are providing simple funerals for. And that more often than not is simple cremations. So it is something to consider. So when does end-of-life care start? The million-dollar question. Now I can talk about the dying process, but that's a different or a longer session. So I'm going to give you a brief summary of when that happens, depending on how you are health-wise. For some people, sadly, they will have a sudden death for whatever reason. For others, they will have a long-term chronic condition that will slowly start getting worse, and it may be over years. And then for some, it may be a malignant. They may have cancer. And again, that can be sometimes hard to judge because of the treatments now that are on offer. But we tend to summarise end-of-life care as being when you are thought to be in the last year, month, weeks or days of life. So it's a generalised term, and depending on where you are will depend on whether you are at the year stage or months to live or weeks to live. So for example, within primary care, within your community, your GP practice will have a palliative care register. And people tend to be added to this palliative care register when they are believed to be in the last 12 months of their life for various reasons. And there are tools that we use to describe this. In hospital, however, we tend to coin the phrase end-of-life care when you're in your last days to hours of life, or when you are recognised to be dying. So really it is dependent on which healthcare professional is with you, where you are seeking support, and where you are in your healthcare journey. But more often than not, the term end of life is the last 12 months of somebody's life. Planning, though, I would suggest starts when you are as fit and as healthy as you can be. More often than not, people are coming into hospital and sadly their planning hasn't started, and so that's the first time that we're talking about end-of-life care, or we're talking about resuscitation decisions, or we're talking about your wishes and preferences. And actually, the best time for that to happen is now, when you are as fit and healthy as you can be and you're not needing acute care services. So care and treatment then. This is the bit that probably is the most overwhelming and the bit that somebody doesn't necessarily want to think about. It's about what type of care you would like in the future. Where would you like to be cared for, and where would you like to die? And what options do you have available to you? It is about support. It is about knowledge, and who may be able to help you make those decisions. There are many reasons why people think about planning their care and treatment at the end of their life. Some of them are up here now. So for some, it's to avoid family disputes because they have a complex family. And actually, if it's all mapped out, then it's easier, or should be easier. For some people, it's very much around what is going to give them peace and calm is about being surrounded by the people they love. And it's not necessarily where they die, it's who are with them when they die. For some, it might be that they definitely do not want to prolong their life if they don't have quality of life. And that varies from person to person. For some, it's very much about their dignity. They don't want to lose their dignity, and if they do, they would rather not be here. For others, it's important that treatment is continued until the very end. And for some people, it's about that reassurance that people know who they are, what matters most to them, and therefore their environment is important. You're all individuals. You will all want different things, but it is worth thinking about now. I suppose it's at this point that I should say sometimes your wishes may not come true because it may be your circumstances are such that that is not able to happen. So, for example, you may wish to die at home, but because of your end-of-life care journey, it might not be possible for you to die at home. Or your family may choose a different route because they don't feel they could cope. So it's not always possible to make your wishes come true. But if you have expressed them, at least it's a start for people to consider, for healthcare to consider, for your family to consider your wishes. So recording your healthcare wishes, there are many ways that you can do this, from simple statements, called advanced statements or wishes and preferences, which is free to do, and I'll go into in more detail in a moment, or advanced decision to refuse treatment, often called a living will, which you may have heard about, or lasting power of attorney for health and welfare. You can also get a lasting power of attorney for finance as well. This is where you choose someone to be your nominated person. But there is a registration fee for that. So I'm briefly going to go through these 3 elements. So advance statement. Just to be clear, this is not legally binding. This is your wishes and preferences that will be considered at the time. It's important because, as certainly within healthcare, we would want to know what matters to you. We want to be able to deliver personalised care. And very often we don't get an insight because people come to us acutely unwell, sometimes not able to talk to us, and so therefore we act in your best interest or their best interest. So it's often very handy if we know what your wishes and preferences are at this time. And you can do that in many ways. You can do that to discuss that with those people important to you, or you can consider writing things down and signing it and dating it and having a witness to that. Or you can make a voice recording or a video, however it is you find you wish to express your wishes and preferences to validate them. It's always worth including your name, date of birth and address at the time, as well as dating it. And share copies with as many people as possible. One of the documents we use in the acute care setting and in community is the respect plan. And I don't know whether before this talk you'd heard of this, whether any of you know about this, have got one. It's a national document. We have had it in Derbyshire and Staffordshire. Staffordshire were about 6 months behind Derbyshire for quite some time now, since 2018. As it says on here, it's a recommended summary plan for emergency care and treatment. And it's your document. It belongs to you. However, it's normally initiated because of a medical event, certainly within an acute hospital setting. So if you were to come into the emergency department or the medical assessment unit, and it might be deemed appropriate that you would not be resuscitated should your heart stop, that's probably when this document will be first initiated. However, that's not always the best time. Like I've said, the best time is when you are as fit and well as you can be and having those discussions with your GP. Because when you come into hospital, it tends to be the focus is on the treatment that we can no longer give you, that would no longer be effective. And potentially one of those treatments could be cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So resuscitating you when your heart stops. If you've got a long-term chronic condition or frailty or a terminal disease, it might be that this treatment is no longer an option. And this might have been the first time that it's been discussed with you. We'd like to get it out there now, that these are things that, it will happen at some point in your life. Somebody will be having a conversation about respect. It's more than resuscitation, though. It is about your wishes and preferences. It is about what you value most and what you fear most, what you wish to avoid. And it's worth thinking about this now and not waiting until a healthcare professional perhaps says to you, we would like to discuss respect. It's not legally binding, so it can be ripped up by a family member. It can be lost. It can be chewed up by the dog. And therefore, if you come into the acute setting, then a decision will be made in your best interests when you arrive back into hospital. And that may still be that they would not offer you the treatment to restart your heart should your heart stop. Advance decision to refuse treatment or a living will. This is legally binding as long as you have capacity and that it has been dated and you have witnesses that have witnessed it. This is about letting professionals know the treatment you are absolutely refusing not to have. So your decision to refuse treatment, whether that be a tube to feed you if you could no longer swallow, whether that be tubes inserted to help you breathe. There may be treatment that you would not find acceptable, and that's where you would document this. So we couldn't act in your best interest. We would have to act on your wishes. It's legally binding. You don't need to go through a solicitor to do this. It is worth speaking to your healthcare professional, though, whether that be a hospital consultant if you have a long-term condition or a chronic disease, or whether it's your GP or your practice nurse to start the conversation. An advanced decision is not the same as an advanced statement, in that the advanced statement can be overruled. Like I say, you may not always get your wishes, but an advanced decision to refuse treatment or an ADRT, absolutely we need to abide by. Even if we think that you could recover, but you have said no to something, we have to abide by your wishes. Unlike an advanced statement, where we can override your wishes if we think it's in your best interest. So that's the slight difference between the two. If you definitely don't want something to happen, you need an advanced decision to refuse treatment or a living will. Lasting power of attorney. So I'm going to focus on the health and welfare for this talk, but there is one for finance. This is about nominating a trusted person to manage your affairs if you were unable to talk, be incapacitated, or in the event of your death. You do not need a solicitor. You can use a solicitor, but you don't need one. You can do this online by going to gov.uk. It is legally binding. It's registered with the National Office of the Public Guardian. And the LPA does end upon your death. And it costs £82. So it's relatively simple to do. It looks a little bit complicated when you first go on. But I've done one and it is quite straightforward. Again, you need some independent witnesses, 2 witnesses to that. I would always share this with your primary care provider if you're known to the acute services, also within acute hospital provider as well as the person who is actually your nominated person, or you may have multiple. Think about having, when you think in a multiple though, I'd just be cautious because that can also cause tension and problems. So preferred place of care and death. This will depend on what you want. This is very personal to you. However, you may be limited because of your healthcare condition or your specific healthcare need. What we know statistically is that 43% of people living in Derbyshire die in hospital. I think we're sort of told maybe, we all think that actually home might be the place that we'd like to die. And for some people, that's just not possible. So we do need to be thinking of all other options. So there is home. Absolutely, there is home. And you can be supported by domiciliary care. You can be supported by community palliative care nurses or Marie Curie. There is ways to support you being at home at the end of your life. It may be that actually home is where you wish to be cared for, but you wish to die in hospital. So you need to think about the two things. Where do you wish to be cared for? Where do you wish to die? Care home. hospital or hospice? Now, in southern Derbyshire, we don't have an inpatient hospice. We have Treetops Hospice Care, but they are a hospice at home facility. In the Trust, we have the Nightingale Macmillan unit, which is our specialist palliative care unit, so our hospice. And then we also have Ward 2, which is our end-of-life care ward for those who are simply dying, ordinary dying. Within Staffordshire, we have St Giles Hospice, which does have an inpatient area. We don't have an end-of-life care ward at Queen's Hospital in Burton, but we will access Ward 2 if somebody wishes to die in hospital. I'm going to draw your attention to the Derbyshire Alliance End-of-Life Care Toolkit. And there is a member of the public page. We are developing this currently, but I'm just going to do a live, hopefully go in live, and just sort of navigate around it for you. If it'll let me. No. It's not going to let me, I don't think. I'll go back to the presentation. This presentation will be shared, so the link will be on there. But you can go into the various tabs that are there, so planning for my future care, what is end-of-life care, more about actually what the last days of life looks like, which I'm not going to go into this evening. The practicalities of what to do when somebody has died. Organ donation, which I've talked about, and then a directory of services. And I think for those of you who maybe are part of the Trust, we are offering Last Days Matters training. This session is part of that, so you've already had the first part of that. It's a 3-hour session. Can be quite emotional or emotive, but it hopefully then will help you, or it's designed for you to go for the whole of the end-of-life care journey, from the start to the finish. We are offering this as part of our National Dying Matters Awareness Week training. It's normally small groups and small numbers, and it will be advertised on the intranet for anybody that's interested that is in the Trust. Anybody not in the Trust that actually belongs to an external group that potentially would want this training for their group, then we're happy to talk about providing that training for you. And I thought I'd just end on this, because hopefully, look at the daffodils and smile, because I'm hoping this hasn't brought the mood down too much, talking about planning your end-of-life care and what it is you may or may not want at the end of life. I'm hoping it's given you food for thought to even start planning, and maybe some of the things you've never even heard of before or never thought about to start thinking about. Some useful websites there. I'll leave it on that one though, I think. Okay. Anybody got any questions?
Okay. Recently, one of my relatives elected to donate his body for research that didn't seem to be covered by your
No.
presentation.
No, I didn't go down that route.
Right.
Only because not everybody gets accepted for various reasons.
Yeah.
But you can absolutely do that. There's only, I think there's 2 hospitals, isn't there, in the country? 2 university hospitals that accept cadavers
Yeah. Yeah. This is
for medical science. Yeah. So, yes, if anybody is interested in donating your body to medical science, because it is a good thing to do, they will ask you at the time whether what kind of research you want to go into, whether that is for dissection purposes for medical students, or whether it is to do with disease management. So, for example, if you died from dementia, it may be you want your brain to go to research for dementia rather than your body going for medical science, for dissection, for teaching. So there are a couple of things that they will ask you if you're thinking about donating your body to medical science. Your funeral will also be paid for. That's just something else to bear in mind. Thank you for sharing that.
Jane, thank you for that. It seems to be really orientated to adult deaths. Are there any special kind of support? I'm assuming there are in lots of ways for children, obviously, and young people and young babies.
Yes, so I am an adult nurse, so therefore my experience is adult. But yes, within the trust, certainly we have got the KITE team, and they support children who. It's interesting because within children's services, they don't necessarily talk about planning their end of life care. They just have a care plan because they know that they have a life-shortening or life-limiting condition. So it's a little bit different in child services as to how they approach death and dying of young children. Interestingly, because of the care that some of our children with life-limiting diseases and the advance in science that has happened, more and more children are living to transition into adult services. And I think what we need to get better at, to be honest, is that transition. It is very different in children's services with regards to planning end-of-life care, the support that they get, then transitioning into adult services. So that is something we are actually working on in this trust. With regards to hospice care for children, it's Rainbow's Hospice, which is part of Loros Hospice in Leicester, is where our children in Derbyshire would go. And then it's, is it Dougie Mack? I'm looking at my colleague. Donna Louise Hospice in Staffordshire for children. Interestingly, most children die at home. That's our experience anyway in Derbyshire. So it is slightly different with regards to children. Yeah.
I just want to say two things. Firstly, I really encourage people to have those conversations about end of life. My mother was knocked down and died within 24 hours of that collision on the street. But the previous day, she had been having a discussion with my father and my sister about end-of-life issues. And it made it so much easier for the family to be able to make a decision with, and the timing was really sad, but, the discussions had been had. Really, really helpful. The second thing I wanted to mention was changing options in cremation. One of the things that cremation does is have a significant carbon footprint, and that can be a consideration and a worry for some people. But there's a new process which is coming in, which is sometimes called water cremation or resumation. And it means that the body is effectively dissolved away and you end up with water that can actually just go back into the water system. You don't need to be burning, so you don't need to have gas. And it can be heated with electricity, which can be green electricity. It's not readily available yet.
It's not.
But I would love to have people to start talking about it because it could be the way of the future.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I didn't bring it up because it isn't really readily available at the moment. Like I also didn't mention a natural burial either. There are various sites within the East Midlands and West Midlands. I think there are 6. So you might not be able to be buried where you wish to be buried. You will have to be buried wherever these natural sites are. But that is also something, if that's important to you, that is absolutely available in the East Midlands and the West Midlands. So thank you for mentioning that. I think we will see more of these services, natural burials and water cremation happening, not cremation, water burials happening in the future. It just needs more people to be wanting it, I think. It's like with anything, isn't it? If the need is there, there will be the service.
If people know that there's a possibility.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you for that. And I'm also very sorry to hear about your mum. Coming round with the microphone.
Hi, just wanted to clarify something. When you have power of attorney for health and well-being, can you incorporate the advanced decision to refuse treatment into that, or is it a separate document?
Separate document.
Has to be separate. Okay.
Yeah. The advanced decision to refuse treatment is a little bit different. So with a lasting power of attorney, that is more about if you were to lose capacity for whatever reason, your nominated person will be included in discussions around your care and your treatment. Whereas an advanced decision to refuse treatment is your voice saying, I don't want this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it means that
because you will still have the lasting power of attorney will still be decisions made in your best interest in discussion with your nominated person. Unlike the advanced decision to refuse treatment or living will, which is your voice saying definitely don't do this. Yeah. So one is sort of a bit it's sort of contradicting, really.
So if you have nominated people for the power of attorney, they could also have a copy of your
ADRT. Absolutely.
That's good.
Yes. The advanced decision to refuse treatment is the clearest way that your voice can be heard, and where things will not be done in your best interest. They'll be done because you have stated. So yes. I think that's...
It's an exercise.
You are. Hello.
Hi. I know you've given us lots of useful information today, and that's been really, really good. But actually, nobody delivers this information in sign language, and this is a really big problem amongst the deaf community. There are a lot of barriers to information faced by the community, and I'm just wondering who we can approach and ask to look at developing some of this, to have some deaf translators or deaf interpreters relay this information and make resources, because where do we go? It is a massive lacking within the community. This information on the page is vital, that they need to know this to plan their future.
I hear that. I'm hearing you. And I think we have got connections within our end-of-life care team. We sit within a compassionate communities workforce, which is part of the ICB, the Integrated Care Board. And we can absolutely take this forward for you. And we can do something.
Lovely, thank you.
Can I also say, as a governor, I have access, I go to meetings with the patient experience team, and I can raise it as an issue within the patient experience team so that they can look at it in conjunction with Jane and her team. Is that good? Thank you.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm going to make an observation, actually, to the audience. Obviously, I'm not sure who's watching or listening online, but the audience, when I look at the demographic of the audience, it's very telling. So you're not the only protected characteristic or the only people feeling isolated, because we need to be a bit more wider reaching, full stop. And we are trying. And thank you for letting us know that we're not doing good enough yet. We're not doing well enough yet.
I was interested. I was interested in what you just said about in the ICB in Derby and Derbyshire.
Yeah.
Does that apply in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent as well?
It does. They across both counties ICBs, so integrated care boards. There is an end-of-life care programme board and end-of-life care operational group, and we do sit at both. We're always learning and we're always taking things forward, which is why it's very helpful to know when we're not perhaps hitting the mark yet. So yes, we do. We are heavily involved. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for all that information. It's quite illuminating, put it like that. Having already gone through quite a bit of it with my mother only 3 years ago, what bothers me, I mean, I have done a will, I've done power of attorney for myself, is the fact that I feel very, very upset that because I haven't any family, that a solicitor who doesn't even really know me, apart from a name on a piece of paper, is the one that's going to act, in inverted commas, on my behalf. And I think this is something that needs to perhaps be incorporated in future as to how to actually help somebody who has no family, no offspring, no immediate next of kin, how to go about it and to feel supported.
I'm going to put a little spin on that. It doesn't have to be a blood relative. It could be your best friend or the person you're most closest to. Unless, of course, that's a pet, because then that's a little bit tricky.
No, I haven't got a pet.
Okay.
But it is difficult when you haven't, and most of the people I know are probably as old as I am,
Yeah.
and or even older.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sadly, there's not a lot we can do about that. But some people do. Some people do have. In fact, some people have nominated neighbours, and neighbours have been quite happy to be. But you need to be very planned, then, don't you? You need to have had your funeral sorted, your will sorted, anything like that, so that it's easy as it can be for your neighbour. Should they get the call from Royal Derby to say, you're dying. It's not easy. Yeah.
Just very quickly, you can change the name on the power of attorney documents. You don't have to stick with the solicitor. You can put somebody that's...
You can.
Yes, you can change
Yep.
it. It's not in stone.
It's not.
Unfortunately, I
So
was
if you
told...
fall out with somebody...
Sorry, unfortunately, I was told that if I changed the solicitor, I have to go to a different solicitor and pay for the whole lot again.
I don't think that's true. No, it's not true. No, not true.
Right, well, don't know. I'll tell you the solicitor.
Yeah, I don't think they can. They can't hold you. They absolutely can't hold you to that.
No.
They can't hold you to that. It's just about changing details at the office of the public guardian.
Yeah.
Do you know this? It's very interesting. Thanks very much. This is working.
I can hear you.
Can I? Pardon? Yeah. Can I just say it's very relevant to us. We're all of a certain demographic. We're closer to the end than the beginning. But really, you know, just as things become relevant when they affect you, you don't start thinking about retirement until you're a bit older. If someone talks to you about it when you're 18, it doesn't mean a great deal. Yeah. If we want to make death less of a taboo, really these sorts of discussions ought to be happening with the younger group as well and the younger demographic. And it's really interesting. I didn't know that actually you could leave a voicemail and a voice message and so on. So, you know, those kind of conversations ought to be beginning earlier on, in my opinion.
I agree. And it's up to us to normalise it. It's up to you to normalise it. So the reason I've been obsessed by death and dying, I think, is because it was normalised in my house at the dinner table. My granddad had planned his funeral. Apart from he didn't plan for the fact that the pacemaker needed taking out, which really then, you know, my grandma was a little bit peeved about that because that was an inconvenience that he'd not thought about. But it is about normalising those conversations, and it is up to us to do that. But yes, there are many ways in which you can, and you know, the one thing, I'm going quickly, sorry, I will speed down. The one thing that people say they miss about the person that has died is their voice. Because you can look at a photograph, but you start forgetting how they sounded. So actually recording your wishes and preferences is also your legacy, because people then will still hear your voice. So it is worth thinking about.
You mentioned the respect form, and obviously that if you come into an acute setting in A&E, but how do you get one of those and fill one of those in? You say like, sort of, I'm mid-50s and would want people to know well, later on whether I wanted resuscitating.
So in the first instance, I would approach your GP or your practice nurse.
Right.
Now, if you're fit and healthy, they're probably going to go, oh, you don't need one of those. You need to be insistent. Because it's your document, it's not theirs. And you can still be for resuscitation. It's not that they have to make a decision about not treating you if your heart was to stop. You can still be for resuscitation. But actually, if I was in an accident or I was to suddenly have a stroke, this is what's important to me and this is what I fear. So we need more of us actually to be approaching our healthcare providers and asking for it rather than waiting for it to be offered to you. It's about being in control of your future. And at some point, somebody will be having a discussion about not providing resuscitation should your heart stop. So you may as well be ahead of the curve.
I lost my husband 10, 12 years ago. Having to plan the funeral was very difficult. After the event, I decided I would do my own funeral there and then. So 3 months later, I went down to Wathal's and planned everything. And they said, what is your budget? And I said, my budget is about 5,000. And it came in under 5,000, exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
The music, who, and everything. So I would recommend
Amazing.
anybody do that, because the relief for me and also for my family was immense.
It's a gift.
It is.
It's
a gift
to your loved ones.
Yeah.
I can't underestimate, the value that your loved ones will feel knowing, even though they may, don't talk about it. Please don't talk about it. Actually, they will be grateful that you've done that. Because it is a big,
It is a big gift. And I've told a lot of my friends and they've said, how morbid? I said, no, I'm caring.
It's your wedding. Number 2.
Jane, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I'm hoping it was helpful.
I know I would learn quite a lot, but I think it's mind-blowing what you've gone through tonight, and I think we'll all take a lot away. The talk will be live on the UHDB website in about 2 weeks' time. We will have the slides on there as well. If you go to UHDB and then go into the governors section, and the talk will be there along with previous talks. So we'll be able to do that. And if anyone would like the slides separately, if they contact us in the governance office, we will forward them on to you. Not a problem.
I have added the references as well, so where you can go for more information. You cannot go wrong, though, with the government websites and the NHS websites.
Sorry, Robin.
That's the most up-to-date information.
40 years before my father died, he was asked by somebody to play his piano and sing songs and have it recorded. And now, of course, I can play that anytime. Yeah. And I was thinking that anybody that has a musical or singing personality, even if you only record your children singing, but keep a record of it.
Totally agree.
It's quite useful.
People don't think about it until it's too late. It's so important. And even if you don't have such a talent, just even read a book or something. Read a book out loud, narrate something, and somebody will still have your voice, a favourite poem or whatever, or even read a song if you can't sing a song. They will have your voice, and that, again, it gives people so much, that's the bit that you miss, isn't it, that voice? Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
A list, because I'm useless at remembering names. So Ross and the AV and the IT, Alex, Fraser and Helena for doing the sign language for us, which was brilliant tonight, really needed. And Pip, if she's still here, Pip did an enormous amount of work to set this up tonight. And Jill and the charity team for everything they've done for us, and for the daffodils we've had. So thank you. And I hope you all have a safe journey. The next talk in June will be on chronic fatigue syndrome and ME, and then in September we'll have a talk on dementia. So have a safe journey home, and thank you all for coming. I'll be in touch. Thank you.